I've worked night shifts on oncology for years, and I've seen the floor go quiet in ways that never leave you. Patients pass, rooms are cleaned, and life goes on. But sometimes, the hospital doesn't let go so easily. Mr. F was one of our regulars. A kind man, mid-60s, always writing notes in a little journal he kept by his bed. His wife came every night, smoothing his sheets, kissing his forehead, and reminding him she'd be back in the morning. That evening, his decline was faster than any of us expected. By 11:07 p.m., he was gone. His wife sat with him, then left with his notebook and belongings. Environmental services came through, sanitized the room, and the bed was neatly made fresh sheets, curtains pulled open, call button unclipped. By midnight, 612 was officially empty. At 2:15 a.m., the call light went off. The board at the nurses' station lit up. Room 612. His room. I was already near the door. The dome light glowed above it. That ordinary little reminder that someone needs you. Except no one was supposed to be there. I stepped inside. The bed was still perfectly made, untouched. The tray table was pushed against the wall. The call button lay exactly where I had placed it earlier on top of the tray, out of reach. Yet the light was on. I picked up the handset and reset it. The board went quiet. The dome light shut off. Nothing felt wrong, but nothing felt right either. I told myself it was just a glitch, but then I looked up at the chart clock on the wall. Hospitals have special clocks used to freeze the exact time of critical events. I had stopped that clock at 11:07 p.m. The time of Mr. F's death, then restarted it after documenting. But now it was frozen again, stuck on 2:15 a.m. The same minute his call light rang. I pressed the button, and the hands began moving once more. The second hand ticked forward like nothing had happened. I left the room unsettled, but I kept doing my rounds. That's what you do, you keep moving. Still, I couldn't shake the thought. Why would that light go off at the same time the clock stopped? In the morning, when I gave report, I mentioned it quietly. My relief just nodded. She didn't laugh, didn't dismiss it. She only said, "His wife's coming at 7. When she arrived, I gave her his remaining belongings and told her the words he'd asked me to share. Please tell her I wasn't alone. I almost didn't mention the call light, but I did. I told her it went off at 2:15. Her eyes softened, and she smiled faintly. He always rang the bell for me when his tea was ready. Never impatient, just letting me know he wanted me there. There's no box in the chart for things like that. No checkbox for a room that remembers, or a call light that answers for someone who's gone. But every time I pass 612, I still make sure the call button is clipped where a patient can reach it, just in case someone needs to ring again. I've worked oncology long enough to know death has its rituals. You start to recognize the signs, the slowing breaths, the sudden calm after pain, the way some patients look toward the corner of the room as if they see someone the rest of us can't. Most of it can be explained. Medication, the brain shutting down, the body preparing. But there are things that don't fit any chart or textbook. One of them is what we call the visitor in black. The first time I heard about it, I thought it was just another floor legend. Every hospital has them. The cursed room, the bed that always malfunctions, the light that flickers at the exact time someone passes. You roll your eyes, but a part of you listens anyway. It was a Tuesday night, near the end of a long shift. I had a patient, Mr. Lawson, late-stage lymphoma, thin as paper. His skin yellowed from liver failure. Around 2 in the morning, I was checking his vitals when he whispered, "Who's that man?" I turned, expecting to see a staff member, but there was no one. The hall was quiet, the door closed behind me. "By the pole," he said. His voice was steady, not confused. He was pointing at the IV stand where his fluids dripped, steady and slow. His eyes followed something tall, something he clearly saw. I told him it was probably just the shadows from the hallway light, but he shook his head. "No, he's right there, by the pole." I smoothed his blanket and promised I'd keep an eye out. He didn't seem scared, just resigned, like he was recognizing someone expected. 3 days later, Mr. Lawson coded. We tried, but there was nothing to bring back. I might have let it go, chalked it up to medication or the hallucinations that come with organ failure if it had ended there, but it didn't. A week later, another patient, Miss Hernandez, breast cancer metastasized to the lungs, called me into her room after midnight. She was awake, wide-eyed, and said in a low voice, "Don't leave me alone with him." "With who?" I asked. "The man in black. He keeps standing there, by my IV." Her heart rate monitor spiked as she spoke. She wasn't delirious. Her oxygen levels were holding. I checked the room, nothing. Just the faint hiss of oxygen through her cannula and the drip of her infusion pump. She coded 5 nights later. Still, I told myself coincidences happen. We see decline every day. But then came the third. Mr. Riley, colon cancer. He was one of those tough patients, the kind who joked with the staff even when the pain showed on his face. At 3 a.m., I heard him talking low, steady words, like a man having a conversation. When I stepped in, he looked over at me, pale and unsettled. "You saw him, didn't you?" he asked. "Who?" He nodded toward the IV pole. His fluids clicked through the pump, the tubing swaying just slightly. "The tall one. He doesn't talk, just watches." I didn't know what to say. I tried to ground him, asked about his pain, offered water, but he shook his head. "He's been here 2 nights now, just waiting." He coded within the week. After that, I stopped brushing it off. 3 patients, all within weeks of each other, all reporting the same figure. A tall, black shadow by the bedside, always near the IV pole. Always watching, always silent. Word spread among the staff. Someone from nights started calling it the visitor in black. We tried to joke about it, the way nurses do when something gnaws at you. But every time another patient mentioned seeing someone in their room, my stomach tightened. The strange part? It wasn't only the dying who saw it. One of our healthier patients, in remission and due for discharge, pressed her call light in the middle of the night. When I asked what was wrong, she whispered, "There's a man in my room." I checked everything, bathroom, closet, hallway, nothing. Security even swept the floor, but she was adamant. He'd been standing by her IV pole, watching silently. She was discharged 2 days later, and I never saw her again. Sometimes I wonder, was it a hallucination? A trick of the dim lights and exhaustion? Patients on heavy medications can see things, yes, but the descriptions were too specific, too consistent. Always tall, always black, always by the IV pole, and always followed by decline. I still walk that floor at night. I still adjust IV drips, straighten blankets, answer call lights. But every time I step into a dark room, I glance at the corner near the pole. Because part of me expects to see him, and if I ever do, if I ever catch more than a patient's frightened eyes or a whispered report, then I'll know for sure. The visitor in black isn't just a story nurses tell in hushed voices at the station. He's real, and he's waiting. I've worked oncology long enough to know the hallways carry more than just echoes. But pediatrics, that's a different weight entirely. On our pediatric oncology wing, we try to keep things bright. Murals of cartoon animals on the walls, shelves of toys in the playroom, little touches to make the place feel less like a hospital. But at night, when visiting hours are over and the lights are dimmed, those same toys and murals stop feeling cheerful. A teddy bear in daylight is comfort. At 2 a.m., it's something watching you from the corner of the room. I'll never forget the week we started noticing the toys. It was one of those rare stretches when our census was low. Only 2 kids admitted on the unit, both of them too weak to leave their rooms. The playroom was tidy, everything in its place. But every morning when we came in, something would be off. A doll stroller moved from one wall to the other. Building blocks scattered across the mat even though no one had been strong enough to play with them. A toy car halfway down the hallway like it had been rolled and forgotten. At first, we blamed housekeeping. Maybe someone was reorganizing. Maybe a night shift tech went in for supplies and brushed against the toys. But one morning, I walked in at 6 a.m. and saw it myself. A toy fire truck sat just outside the playroom door, wheels facing down the hall. I had passed that exact door at 3:30 during rounds, and it wasn't there. No patient had been up. No staff had gone in. We laughed nervously at the nurse's station, the way you do when something unsettles you but you don't want to give it power. We called it the night shift cleaning crew, but after a week, security decided to check the cameras. What they found still unsettles me. It was 2:41 a.m. on a Tuesday. The playroom camera showed the corner where the toy bins Saturday. The footage was grainy, but clear enough to make out a small shape. A child. He couldn't have been more than 6 or 7, head down, hair hanging forward. He pushed a small toy car across the floor, then stood, picked it up, and rolled it straight out into the hall. The car kept going until it bumped the baseboard. Then the child turned, looked up toward the camera, though his face was blurred in the worst way, like the lens couldn't focus on it, and vanished. No fade, no walk out of frame, just gone. The problem was no pediatric patients had been admitted that week. None. The rooms were empty. The census was clear. Security thought it was a glitch. The cameras sometimes skip frames, but glitches don't roll toy cars across a hall. From then on, every nurse on the floor walked differently at night. We'd peek into the playroom during rounds, half expecting to see the toys already moved. Sometimes we did. A ball on the mat. A coloring book, open to a page no one remembered. A stuffed animal facing the wrong way. One night, I was charting near 4 a.m. when I heard a faint rattling, like plastic wheels on tile. I thought maybe equipment was being rolled from storage. I followed the sound toward the playroom. The hallway was empty, but right there, under the glow of the exit sign, was the same fire truck I had seen before, resting perfectly straight in the middle of the hall. No one else was around. No patient could have pushed it. And yet, it looked like someone had just let go. We never told the parents. How could we? Pediatric oncology parents already carry enough. They don't need to wonder if the playroom holds something their kids shouldn't see. But among staff, it became something unspoken. Once, a nurse swore she heard a laugh soft, quick, unmistakably a child's, while passing the playroom after midnight. Another said she walked in to find the toy piano keys pressed down, as though someone had just played and walked away. The strangest part was the timing. Every time the toys moved, within a week, we'd lose one of our kids. It wasn't always the same room, or the same diagnosis, but it happened often enough that we stopped calling it coincidence. The visitor in pediatrics wasn't a shadow, wasn't a sound, it was a child who came to play. I still see that camera footage in my head sometimes. The way the boy crouched low, intent on his toy, like he wasn't aware of being watched. The way his head lifted toward the camera at the end, blurry face turning slowly upward. Maybe it was a child who had once been ours, still returning to the only place he knew. Maybe it was something else. All I know is that toys don't move on their own. And empty hallways don't echo with the sound of small plastic wheels. Even now, when I work that floor, I can't walk past the playroom without glancing in. If the toys are still in their bins, I breathe easier. But if I see one out of place, a ball, a truck, a doll stroller left facing the wrong way, my stomach tightens. Because I've learned to take it as a sign. A child has come to play, and soon one of ours will not wake up. I've worked nights in oncology for most of my career. If you've ever been in a hospital after midnight, you know the difference. The lights dim, the halls empty, and every sound carries further than it should. Day shift is all motion, phones ringing, families talking, doctors in and out. Night shift is something else entirely. You notice things more. And sometimes, you notice things you can't explain. For us, it's the woman in the blue gown. The first time I heard about her, it came from a tech who'd worked our floor for 20 years. She told me, "If you see her, don't chase her. She doesn't like to be followed." I laughed it off. Every hospital has its stories. But then I saw her. It was around 3 a.m., that dead hour when everything feels suspended. I'd just finished checking vitals and was heading back toward the nurses' station. The hallway was long and quiet. That's when I noticed movement near room 618. A woman was walking slowly, head slightly bowed. She wore a faded hospital gown, the pale blue kind with the white trim we don't even use anymore. Her hair hung down around her shoulders, and IV tubing trailed behind her, the plastic dragging softly against the tile floor. I thought at first it was a patient, maybe someone confused, wandering out of their room. That happens. Patients sometimes get restless or delirious from medication. But when I called out, "Ma'am, do you need help?" she didn't turn, didn't acknowledge me at all. I took a few steps closer. She rounded the corner. When I followed, the hallway was empty. I searched the rooms nearby. All my patients were accounted for. The doors were closed, monitors beeping steadily. No one was missing. But the faint sound of that dragging tubing stayed with me. I didn't mention it at first. Nurses get tired. Our eyes play tricks on us. But weeks later, another nurse on my shift asked quietly, "Have you ever seen a woman in a blue gown, walks with tubing on the floor?" The way she said it told me everything. I wasn't the only one. It wasn't just staff, either. Patients saw her too. One evening, before shift change, a woman with ovarian cancer asked me if her roommate's family had visited in the night. I told her no. Visiting hours had ended at 9 p.m. She shook her head. "No, not family." The woman in the gown, she sat in the chair by the window all night, didn't say a word. Her roommate died 3 days later. Another patient, an older man, lucid and oriented, described waking in the night to see a figure sitting in the corner of his room. "She didn't move," he said. "Just sat there, like she was waiting." He asked if she was a new nurse. We hadn't even staffed the unit with anyone in blue gowns for years. He coded later that week. Over time, a pattern formed. The sightings always seemed to come before a patient's decline. Not hours before, but days. Like a shadow passing over the unit, lingering quietly until its work was done. Some say she's just the product of exhausted minds and anxious patients. That's what I wanted to believe. But then came the night that still unsettles me most. It was near 4 a.m. I was walking back from pharmacy storage, carrying a new bag of chemo. The hall was dim, the kind of dim where the exit signs glow red, and everything else feels washed in shadow. And there she was, standing at the far end of the hall, head down, pale blue gown brushing her ankles, tubing trailing across the tile. I froze. For a moment, neither of us moved. The IV tubing swayed slightly, though the air was still. My throat went dry. I wanted to call out, but something in me knew not to. And then, in less time than a blink, she was gone. Not turned away, not walked into a room. Gone. I stood there with my heart racing, chemo bag clutched to my chest, the hallway empty before me. Later, I checked the chart clocks in the rooms nearby. 2 of them had stopped frozen at exactly 4:02 a.m., the moment I'd seen her. No one had touched them. After that night, I stopped trying to explain her away. Too many staff had seen her. Too many patients had described her the same way. A woman in a faded blue gown, silent, watchful, tubing dragging behind her like she had once been tethered to the machines we still use every day. We don't talk about her openly. Families don't need to know. But when a patient says they've seen someone sitting in the corner, or when a nurse swears they heard the faint scrape of tubing across tile in an empty hall, we understand what it means. It means the woman in the blue gown is making her rounds, and when she appears, we know it's only a matter of time before one of ours slips quietly away. I've worked in oncology for a long time. Long enough to know when patients are confused from medication, when they're delirious from infection, and when something else entirely is happening. Nurses are trained to explain away the strange things we hear: visions, odd requests, words whispered on the edge of life. But some nights, I can't explain them. One night, I was caring for Mr. Daniels. He was in his late 50s, battling aggressive leukemia. The chemo had been brutal on him, his hair gone, skin pale and bruised, IV lines in both arms. He was tired but lucid, the kind of patient who always said thank you no matter how much pain he was in. It was close to midnight when I went into his room to check his vitals and meds. The room was dim, just the glow from the hallway light spilling across his face. He looked at me, calm but serious, and said, "Can the nurse in black bring my meds instead?" I froze. We don't wear black on the oncology floor. Our scrubs are shades of blue, gray, or the occasional patterned set in pediatrics. Black isn't allowed. It's considered unprofessional, too harsh for a place that already carries so much heaviness. And that night, I was the only nurse assigned to him. "Mr. Daniels," I asked carefully, "what nurse in black?" He turned his head slightly, eyes focusing on the corner of the room near the IV pump. His voice was steady. "She's standing right there. I see her." The corner was empty. Just the IV pole humming softly, the bag of fluids dripping, tubing curling toward his arm. I told him gently that there was no one there. He frowned, as though I was the one missing something. "She's here every night. She stands there, quiet, watching. Tonight, I'd rather she bring the medicine." I tried to ground him, asked about his pain, checked his orientation. He answered every question perfectly. He knew where he was, what year it was, who was president. He wasn't delirious. When I left the room, my hands were shaking. I didn't tell anyone at the station. We all hear enough from patients at end of life, and no one wants to be the one to bring ghost stories into report. But the words stayed with me. The nurse in black. At 3:15 a.m., his monitor alarmed. Heart rate dropping, O2 saturations falling. We rushed in. Code card at the door. Compressions started. But it was no use. By 3:29, he was gone. Afterwards, when the room was quiet again, I stood there longer than I should have. The IV pump still hummed. The corner where he said she stood was just shadows. But I couldn't shake the feeling that he hadn't been wrong. Weeks later, another patient, different room, different diagnosis, asked me a question that made my blood run cold. She was pale, frail, fighting metastatic breast cancer. I came in to check her pain pump, and she whispered, "Where's the woman in black tonight? She usually comes when it's quiet." I asked her what she looked like. She said, "Tall, dark hair, black scrubs, doesn't smile, she just waits." That patient passed within 48 hours. Over the years, I've heard it more times than I can count. Not from everyone, not even often, but enough to know it's a pattern. Always the same description: a woman in black, silent, standing near the IV pole, always noticed at night, always just before the end. We don't talk about her openly, but among staff, we know. Some call her the black-clad nurse, some call her the watcher. I've even heard one doctor call her Death in uniform. I don't know what she is. A hallucination from meds? A trick of the shadows? Or something else entirely? All I know is this. When a patient looks past me, into that corner by the IV pole, and asks for the nurse in black, I feel the air change. Heavier. Thicker. Like the room is already preparing for goodbye. And I know then that my job isn't to argue with what they see. My job is to stay by their side, hold their hand, and make sure they know they're not alone, even if someone else is already waiting in the corner. Hospitals are full of strange corners, places you walk past every day but never really think about until someone points out there's something different about them. On our oncology floor, that place was the south stairwell. It looked ordinary enough. Gray concrete steps, metal railings scuffed from years of use, a landing halfway down with a narrow window covered in dust. It wasn't even the main stairwell, the elevators were closer and most people used them instead. But everyone on staff knew there was something about that stairwell. Because sometimes, at odd hours, it smelled of roses. Not faint, not imagined. Strong, like someone had just broken open a bouquet. Sweet, floral, and completely out of place against the usual hospital smells of antiseptic, alcohol swabs, and floor wax. The scent would appear and vanish without warning. And it always seemed to come when one of our patients was near the end. The first time I noticed it, I was still new. It was 2 a.m., and I'd run down the stairs to grab something from Central Supply. Halfway down, I stopped cold. The air was thick with the smell of roses. It made no sense. No flowers were anywhere near. No one sprayed perfume in the stairwell. But it was there. Unmistakable. Almost cloying in the stale air. When I got back to the floor, one of our older nurses looked at me and asked quietly, "You smelled it, didn't you?" I must have still looked shaken. I nodded. She just said, "Check 621. Room 621 was one of our sickest patients, a woman in her 80s with advanced pancreatic cancer. By dawn, she was gone. After that, I started paying attention. It wasn't just the roses. Patients spoke of something else. More than once, someone near the end would ask, "Is the lady in white waiting for me?" Always said softly, never in fear, almost with relief. One man, Mr. Hale, I'll never forget him, was barely lucid his last night. But when I came in to adjust his oxygen, he looked past me toward the doorway and smiled. "She's waiting in the stairwell. She smells like roses," he whispered. Hours later, he passed peacefully in his sleep. Another patient, a young mother with lymphoma, asked if her husband had come back early. "There's a woman standing by the stairwell door," she told me. She smiled at me. "Do you know her?" No one else had been there. The sightings were always the same. A woman in white, sometimes described as wearing a gown, sometimes just a long dress. No face anyone could clearly describe, but always near the stairwell. Always when the smell of roses lingered. Among staff, the whispers started. Some called her the angel of the stairwell. Others weren't sure she was an angel at all. "Angels don't haunt stairwells," one tech muttered during report. Maybe it's something else. Still, no one denied the pattern. When the roses came, we knew. It meant we'd be coating someone soon or quietly holding a hand while they slipped away. One night, I decided to test myself. It was around 3 a.m., that hour when the unit feels suspended in time. The halls were empty, call lights quiet. I walked down to the stairwell alone, hand trailing the cool rail as I descended. Halfway down, it hit me. Roses. Strong, sweet, overwhelming. I stopped, heart hammering. The scent seemed to wrap around me, too heavy in the stagnant stairwell air. I whispered, though I don't know why. "Is someone here?" No answer. But I felt it, that sense of not being alone. the kind of heaviness in the air that presses against your skin. I hurried back up, refusing to look over my shoulder. That morning, before shift change, room 614 coded. We worked him for 20 minutes. Nothing brought him back. After that, I never went into the stairwell at night again. Still, the stories keep coming. A CNA swears she saw the woman herself, long hair, white gown, standing at the bottom landing, just barely visible in the dim emergency light. When she blinked, the woman was gone. A patient's family once asked about the nurse in white who walked them to the stairwell after visiting hours, but security showed no such person on the cameras. No one denies the roses anymore. Maybe she is an angel, guiding patients where nurses can't follow. Maybe she's something else entirely, something the building keeps in its bones. All I know is this. When the smell of roses drifts through the hall, I feel my chest tighten. I check my sickest patients more closely. I brace myself for the call, because I know someone will be leaving us soon, and the angel of the stairwell will be waiting. Hi, I just want to take a moment to thank every single one of you for being here. Your support means more than words can ever express. Every view, every like, every comment, it all helps keep this channel alive and growing. If you've enjoyed these stories, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It really makes a huge difference. I'd also love to hear from you. Share your own experiences in the comment section, and let me know where you're watching from. Hearing your stories and seeing the places you all come from is one of the best parts of this community. Thank you again for being part of this journey with me.